Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage Lee Lambert.
Yeah, come on, let's hear it. This is great. Before I introduce our next act, I'll call it that, I forgot to mention this, and I was told that it's very important, which I think it is. This little handy-dandy thing, read the instructions on how to use it. Use it. I played with it last night. It works. But one thing I need to remind you is if you try to use any other pen but the one they provide, it will ruin it. Okay? Just a note. I mean, some of you, how many have done it already? Yeah. How many wouldn't admit it if you did? All right. So let's, I'll tell you what, Todd set a standard. It's going to be hard to beat. That was as good as I've seen. So fortunately, I had a chance to talk to these folks, Ken and Russell, about this program. They've got my interest up. Anytime you start to talk about potential cultural change, no matter which level you're doing in the organization, it always keys my interest. I worked with IBM when they were changing their culture under when he first came in, when they brought in new leadership with Gerstner, and it took almost 5 years to change the culture at IBM from the blue suit, red tie to a very relaxed, productive environment. So it's not easy to do. I think this is going to be a very, very exciting opportunity. So I want to introduce to you Ken Cameron and Russell Stratton, and here's what about them. They have, we had pages of introduction information, but it says together, which is good. That's a good thing. They are the co-authors of the book, and this is the book. You got to get a copy. You got some to sell, Ken? You got some books? Okay, because it said, "I need to effing talk to you." So, I mean, that has to be a good book with a title like that. It's the art of negotiating difficult workplace conversations. So with that, welcome Ken and Cameron. Ken Cameron and Russell Scott.
Hello, everybody. How are you today? Good. Excellent.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say this. Good morning, Calgary. Okay, we're going to do better than this because, I'm going to have to go to Edmonton in a couple of weeks, and I don't want Edmonton to be louder than Calgary. So let's give this one more go and see if we can take the roof off this place. Good morning, Calgary. Fantastic. Definitely the loudest audience that we've played to. And you know that I'll have said that everywhere I go. Okay, so I'm Russell, this is Ken, and our actor here is Jessica. And Jessica works with the Kinkinall, so she's one of the leading improvisers in the city. So we're very lucky to have her with us today to be working with a selection of you folks. All right, so immediately we've mentioned there is an actor in the room. I can see the look of fear that's gone round certain people's faces, and people at the back are thinking, thank goodness I sat at the back and not at the front. So there will be an opportunity for some folks to come up and to practice having those difficult workplace conversations. Okay, so what you can see, these are one or two of the companies that we've worked for over the last sort of 8 or 9 years. This isn't really to massage our ego, but more just to say that we work with a range of organizations, anything from engineering companies, construction, non-profits, further education, public sector. But the common denominator is that we have leaders, managers, supervisors who lead and manage groups of people. And one of the challenges they face is, how do I have those difficult workplace conversations when performance, attendance, or behavior is not the way that we want it to be? How on earth do I look to address this? What do I say and how do I do it? So what we're doing here with our workshop this morning is, yes, I need to effing talk to you, not the ideal way that you would start any conversation, but if we have performance, attendance, or behavioral issues, I do need to effing talk to you. We can't let this thing ride, which we'll come to in a moment. So this workshop that we've got then sort of span out into the book, and then the book then span out into the workshop, so there's been a little bit of cross-pollination there. As you can see, the foreword are written to us by Andrew Fung. So when we very first started this, some of you will recognize Andrew from his work with CBC. And he was one of the first actors that worked with us and said some very kind things about the type of work that we're doing. So what is it that we're trying to do with this style? Just let me tell you this for a moment. So the idea is, rather than us just purely stand here and talk at you for an hour and 15 minutes and you nod and say, well, that was all very interesting, or that was not as good as Todd Hirsch, or whatever it is you're thinking, all right? We actually have our improviser in Jessica, is that as we go through and talk about some of the principles that we promote to our clients that we work with, and then you're going to get a chance to come up here and actually practice in real time. And this is, for me, is what makes this type of learning work, is that it's a practical simulation as close as we can get to real life for you this morning, rather than bringing those individuals into the room. Okay, so it's an opportunity to look at one scenario. You have that on your desk in front of you. You also have some help on a beef model, which I'm going to go through a little bit later. If anybody doesn't have a piece of paper like this in front of them, please indicate, and one of our colleagues from the team will come and bring that out to you if anyone doesn't have that. But that's for you to work on a little bit later on. Okay, so it's a practical idea to make this as real life as we can do in this sort of slightly artificial scenario of being in front of 300 people. Okay, so if you're one of the lucky people that comes up here this morning to give this a go, I can guarantee for you the worst thing that's going to happen is you be a little bit nervous and your ego might get bruised for a little spell of time, okay? There will be no zombie apocalypse, there will be no fire-breathing dragons, and the floor is not going to open and you disappear into the cavern below. The worst thing that happens is, oh shit, I feel a bit awkward sitting up here in front of 299 other people. All right, so question for you then. Why don't leaders have difficult workplace conversations? I'd like you to think about that for a moment. Ken is here with his roving microphone, so we'll take one or two answers from people around the room. Now, Ken's keen to get his steps in today, and he's going to return the favor for me later on. So if you have one question over that side and then one question over that side, he's going to run between you, okay? So that's what I want you to think about. Why don't people leaders have difficult workplace conversations? All right, I'm going to give you 60 seconds to think, and then Ken's going to roam round. And if we don't have volunteers, guess what? We have voluntold. Somebody gets the opportunity to say. Remember, this is the easy bit. You can sit at the table and give the answer. You don't have to come up here. All right. Okay, 60 seconds, and then Ken's going to be roaming around. So talk to the person next to you. Come up with at least one idea, so if he asks you, you have something to say. Okay, we got one. Ken, down the front here, gentleman in the blue jacket. Thank you, sir.
Hello. This is my breakfast table. So what have you got to say? Why don't leaders have difficult workplace conversations?
Well, a lot of people fear a conflict, and they also fear the possibility of their employee leaving based on the outcome of the conversation.
Okay, so people fearing conflict itself. Okay, and then fearing that if it doesn't go well, the person may leave and then I'm left with no one. Okay, quick show of hands, how many people like conflict? How many people like conflict? Okay, we have, I think, 4 people that I can see in here. So if you work with that person, that's going to be a resource for you. Otherwise, we've got 296 other people who are not so keen on conflict. Who else do we have questions? We have
a volunteer right here who headed me off so I couldn't get my steps in.
Sorry, you can go take one over
No,
there.
we'll take this.
I'd say liability. Oftentimes, the situation could be difficult, and if you approach it in the wrong way, you can put yourself into a situation of liability where that employee now feels like they actually have a legal case against you or the company for having this conversation with them.
Okay, so they're feeling there's some sort of grievance that's taken out because how dare you to have mentioned that I'm not perfect, yeah?
You might be creating that grievance by having that conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take one more.
Oh, I'm still not getting my steps in, right here.
I was just going to say the fear of the unknown. You don't necessarily know how it's going to come out. if it's going to make it worse in the end. And so I think there's this kind of safety in, okay, I know what I'm dealing with right now, and I don't know what is going to come if I have this conversation, and I don't want to go there.
Okay, yeah, so we could be saying, well, perhaps I'm better sticking with what I know, because if I try and tackle this, things could get worse. All right? So we've got to think about fear of conflict, with fear of litigation, and fear of the unknown. So second question for you that you can turn back to your colleagues with, what are the implications then if we don't have that conversation and we avoid it? Because we've got enough reasons, and I'm sure if we'd spent long enough, we could have come up with multiple reasons why people don't have the conversation. But what's the implications if we don't? Again, 60 seconds with the people on the table with you. Ken will pick up any answers as they come. What's the implications?
All right, over here, who's got a suggestion? Who's got a response? Oh,
Good one here.
If, as a project manager, you don't deal with difficult situations, then you're considered to be not a good PM. Whereas what I do is I put everything on an issues log and run the issues log, and then deal with VP level stakeholders, and that helps it, especially with weekly reporting on solving issues.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So thinking about if you're the project manager, you're the leader of that team, and you're not having that conversation, it makes you look like you're not a good project manager, because that's the sort of comes with the territory and it's expected. What else do we have? We have somebody down the end there, Ken.
all right. Okay. Oh, you got to keep your hand up. Where was that hand? Oh, here we are.
Wanted to make sure you got your steps in.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. You lower the morale of your team. Like if your team is showing that you're accepting maybe substandard behavior or difficult behavior, and you're not addressing it, how do the other people feel? Oh, they're having to pick up the slack, but they're not getting any recognition for what they're doing. So it does lower the morale and lower the capability of your team to perform.
Absolutely. So it not only lowers the capability, but it also lowers the morale. So people are thinking, well, if I'm going to have to take up the slack for something that somebody else isn't doing, how's that affecting me? And also the other piece with the effect
That's me. Sorry about
on our team might be, well, if they're allowing this person to do it, then why can't I? And so the culture of the team we can have can start to get into that negative spiral. Some of you may have in the past worked on teams where the culture was poor, the attitude of people was poor, it wasn't a great place to work didn't tend to get done. And often that can be because people are seen to just get away with doing the bare minimum, and guess what? Other people say, well, we'll do the same thing. No one seems to be making an issue on this. Okay, the last thing I'd like you to think about, because people have talked about the impact for them as a project manager, they talked about the impact for their team, but what about the impact on the individual themselves? I want us to think about that for a moment. Because actually, we're not doing that person any favors at all by not having that conversation with them. We might think, well, they won't get angry with us, they won't get upset, they won't try and litigate us, they won't leave. But if you think about, spin this for yourself at the moment. If you think about your job, now this is hypothetical because all of the people in this room are wonderful. But let's for a moment, I'd like you to think, what if there was a part of your performance or your behavior at work that wasn't up to the standard that your organization would expect? You weren't aware of it necessarily or hadn't admitted it to yourself, but everybody else knew. Your co-workers knew, clients knew, your boss knew, but nobody wanted to speak to you about it because they were worried about what you might do, what you might say, how you'd react. So we'll just sort of leave it. So in that way, the person's left sort of just wallowing in their inability to do something without having the opportunity for being, one, advised of what the issue is, and secondly, being given the support so they can bring that level of performance, attendance, or behavior back up to an acceptable level. That's the whole reason for having the conversation. We set our standard, and on occasion people aren't meeting that. We need to help them get back up to that standard. So this isn't about punishing people. It's about bringing them back up through education to a level that we need them to be at. So if we don't do that, we're not helping them out. And equally, we could say, we're not a very good project manager if we allow one of our team to flounder just because it might be a bit awkward for a bit to have that conversation. All right? One of our podcast guests, a gentleman by the name of Jerry Fu from Austin in Texas, shared this with us, and we thought we'd share with you. He does a lot of work on conflict management. And this was something that he talked about, the 5 stages of conflict avoidance, and people may recognize 1 or 2 of these. You know, there's that denial stage. I can't believe this is happening. There's that rationalizing away. Well, you know, perhaps it's not as bad. Perhaps we don't need to do something. And he said often what he found is that there was that bargaining stage where people were looking for somebody else who would perhaps have the conversation for them. You know, can I push this up the chain? Can my boss speak to them? Can my co-worker speak to them? And then there might be that sort of, you know, bit of self-realization, and he uses the phrase depression there, but people sort of, oh, I know I need to have this conversation, but I know I'm not particularly good at it, and I might suck and it might go badly. But then finally we get to that point of being acceptance, that we realize that actually this is part of our job and we need to do it. So we need to cowboy up, we need to put our big boy pants on, and we need to actually go and have the conversation. So what we're doing here with you is giving you a framework to use and an opportunity to see how you can do it so it becomes easier for people. Okay, so we are able to go and say, okay, I know it might be challenging, I might feel awkward, but I can do it. Does that sound okay if we see how to do this? Oh, that's a great 1 person. We want to see how to do it? Yeah, I suppose so. Do you want to see how to do this? Okay, fantastic. Remember, Edmonton could be louder than you. Ken.
Thanks very much, Russell. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the form that we're going to use today, which is a program called Forum Theater, and it goes way back to the 1970s. It was developed as a way to encourage social action, really, and it was developed in Brazil, and it was a way for people to get communities to galvanize and get them taking some sort of social action. And it started with a theater troupe that was traveling around Brazil, and they would go from community center to community center to community center, and the next year they went around to the same place and nothing had changed. The people had seen their play, their little, about how communities should come together and they should fight against the oppressive landlords, but they still weren't doing anything. So they kind of rewrote the play, tried it again. 3rd year they came around, still nothing was happening. So the director got really frustrated. He jumps on stage and he starts saying to the audience, like, well, what should this woman do? This poor mother, this poor housewife, what should she do? And he was met with the same kind of stony silence that Russell was met with just a moment ago. Nobody said anything. So he says again, like, what should she do? What should this woman do? Again, nothing, no audience participation whatsoever. So he says a 3rd time, what about this poor mother? What should she do when she's about to be evicted from her hovel, from her house? And there was a woman at the back who finally said, well, she should speak up and get the community to help her. And he says, well, who's that? So he runs out into the audience, he goes, and you know who it is? It's the cleaning lady. She's seen the play 3 times, she's tired of it herself. So he grabs her off in the back of the room, brings her up here, puts her on the front of the stage, kicks the actress off of the stage, puts the cleaning lady in the chair and says, you do it. You show us how it's done. And you know what she did? She took over the whole play. She said to the actor playing the husband, you go out and get a job. Said to the actor playing the son, you go to school. Started pulling other people out of the audience, you be the community people. You be other people in the community. And you do, and get the neighbors together. And before long, she had everybody in the audience participating in the play. Well, wouldn't you know it? Theater troupe comes back the next year. What do you think has changed? Everything has changed. They have started a tenants union. They have started to fight against the landlords. They've asked for stabilized rent control. And as the community has come together and they've started to make change together. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make change in our collective behavior together by drawing on the wisdom of the room or the wisdom of the forum as we go through these scenarios today. So are you all ready to be wise? All right, good. That's better than Russell got. Are you all ready to be wise? All right, here we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you the scenario that we're going to be using today, which is also laid out with you on your piece of paper in front of you. So let me just give you, before we get into the scenario, let me give you a little bit of a background. So these are the rules for forum theater. So I'm going to give you these rules. Anything that you say is true. So if you get invited to come up here onto this chair and you were to sit in this chair and you were to say that the project we're working on today is a construction project, then Jess is going to say, yes, the project we're working on today is a construction project. And the second rule is that Jessica can never make fun of you. You can make fun of Jessica, but she can never make fun of you. So one of the things Russell said is you might get up here and you might suffer a degree of embarrassment, but it won't be because of us, because we will not be making fun of you. And you know that we can guarantee that because we know that if we do, then a second person's never going to volunteer. So we'll never make fun of you. The third one is you can always call time out to get advice from the rest of the forum. And any of your fellow volunteers can call time out, and they can come out and swap out with you. And then I can call time out, and I can check in with the forum to see if there's somewhere we might be able to go next. And then the last rule is that you can rewind at any time. All right, so those are our rules for forum theater. Now, with that, let's look at the scenario. So today's scenario, the background for today, is set in a fictional company called Riverside Consulting. Now, we always set our scenarios in a fictional company. Even if we were all here today and we all worked for the same company, we wouldn't use that company's name. We always set it at Riverside Consulting because we find that if we don't, then we get volunteers to come up and they say, oh, no, we wouldn't do it that way. We would have to fill out a form for 33B. We would have to do it in blue pen. And then it would have to go up the chain to my vice president. Then it would have to be approved by 5 levels. We're just not going to do any of that. Because at Riverside Consulting, anything you say is true. So you are all of you today are going to be an engineer with who supervises a team of engineers at Riverside Consulting. And Riverside is a mid-sized engineering company with responsibility for supporting clients with a wide range of engineering, construction, and environmental projects. So that means that when you come up here to talk about the project can be virtually anything that you say it is. All right? So let's get right into the scenario, as I say, that's on the page in front of you. So Jessica has worked for Riverside for 9 years. And you had to ask Jessica to move job roles about 3 months ago to cover another colleague's long-term absence. But because of some budget constraints within the company, it wasn't possible to bring in another person. Now, you've heard that Jessica's always complaining to anybody who will listen about this, how she doesn't like this arrangement. You've also discovered that deadlines have been missed. Project records are not being kept up to date, meaning that project deliverables can't be tracked. Never happens, right? Would never happen in real life. That's why we set things at Riverside Consulting, right? So, because it happens at Riverside. Now, this is the thing that really, the straw that broke the camel's back. A report that was needed for a recent management training, which was held while you were away, wasn't completed. And this resulted in some sort of degree of embarrassment for the team. And then, when you did get back, you heard from Jessica's colleague, John, that Jessica has been spending time on her old project work with her old team to the detriment of this high priority work. So those are the issues that you are going to have to address with Jessica today. And it's written on the page in front of you there so that you can follow through with some of that. And also on that page in front of you is something called the BEEF model. Now, I'm going to get Russell to come back up here and explain the BEEF model to you because he does a better job of it than I do because he developed it. So here's Russell back again.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Still not Todd Hirsch again. Okay, it's me again. So still not Todd Hirsch. All right, so if you look at the model in front of you, everyone should have a copy so you can sort of follow along. So I developed this about 20, 25 years ago, started working on this sort of model. Used it in companies on 2 continents with project managers, supervisors, managers, leaders at all levels of organizations in all different types of organizations. And where people have found it useful is it gives them a framework for that difficult conversation they're about to have. Because one of the things we don't want to have when we come in to have this conversation with somebody, whilst we don't need it scripted out, is we don't want a blank sheet of paper and think, what on earth am I going to say? Or words to that effect. All right, so this gives you a quick way of being able to plan out how you want that conversation to go after you've done that point when you say, thanks for coming, how are you, take a seat. Okay, we can all manage that bit, but it's the next part we want to focus on. So the first thing is we need to be clear about the behavior that we are addressing. So what is it about what the person has done or not done that's causing a problem? And we need to be clear in our mind what that is. So in the scenario, you can see there are more than one issue there. So you might think about which is the most important that you would want to tackle first. Because you don't necessarily want to go with a shopping list. You know, hey, I'd like to talk to you about these 43 things that I want to go through with this morning. All right, you might want to just come back there, one or two things you want to talk about, and this is the most important one, so that's going to take first. So it would be really clear in your mind. Second point is we need some examples. Okay, so in real life, we have examples that we will have drawn from our monitoring, our records, etc. Okay, here we've given you a couple in this scenario, but as Ken said, because it's not real, you can make shit up, yeah? So you can come up with other examples of things that have gone wrong. You wouldn't do that in real life, just let me remind you. In real life, you don't make shit up, okay, but here you can, just so you know. I'm not giving you that permission. And you want to be specific with those. So we don't want to be saying things like, well, I think there might be some times when you could do a little better. And somebody's like, well, when and how? You could be specific about, last week we had a project meeting where you were supposed to have done a presentation for us and it didn't happen. Now the secret sauce to this model is about this effect. Okay, what's the effect? How is it affecting other people? And it's the impact. The impact it has on other people in the team, the impact it has for the individual, the impact it has for the organization. And why this is important is people can be really good at rationalizing away the first two. Well, I know you said that happened, but it didn't happen in quite that way, and perhaps, you know, it wasn't exactly, I didn't mean it that way, but it's difficult for you to rationalize away the impact it has. And I'll give you a really quick example to illustrate this. Years ago, I had the pleasure of managing a call center. Anybody ever worked in a call center? A couple of lucky people there. And it was an inspiring time of your life, no doubt, when you worked in there. You sit in rows of desks with a headset on, answering the phone. And we had a 24/7 operation, which meant that the 3 teams, 8 hours each in a shift, person A couldn't leave until person B arrived. So we had a member of staff, and he was always late, 15, 20 minutes every day. He had every excuse under the sun as to why he was not in. So, you know, oh, there was the weather. There was a problem with my car. My car isn't working, so I had to get transit. My mother didn't make my lunch for me. Actual excuse, you know. 28-year-old guy, and he said his mother didn't make his lunch for him, and that's why he's late for work. And his argument was, well, you know, it doesn't really matter because I'll make the time up. I'll work through my lunch. I'll stay later. What got the message through for him? The light bulb went on. It was the key that unlocked his thinking. Was when I talked to him about the impact him being late every day had on his co-worker. Because they had to leave 15 to 20 minutes late every day, which meant they caught the traffic on the way home, which meant they were late for getting up to pick up their daughter from the childminder, which meant they paid late charges every day. Then they were late home, they were late for supper, which irritated their partner. Then they were late for taking their other daughter to soccer practice, which pissed off the coach because they were late. And guess what? It was having an impact for that person. But it was only when I could explain to him the impact on his co-worker that eventually the light bulb came on, that being 15 minutes late was an issue. It wasn't just, oh, it's only 15 minutes. Okay? Now, there was more to the conversation than that, but that was one of the things that stuck with me about suddenly got him go, oh, okay. Okay, so we get that, impact. So the behavior, an example or two, and the impact it's having. And then finally, we don't want to leave the conversation until we've talked to the person about the future, i.e. what they can change. Because one of the challenges is if we come into this, we're nervous, we're not sure what's going to happen, we worry about the reactions we might get from someone, and we get through, you know, 2/3, 3/4 of the way through, they haven't exploded, there's not been some argument, they haven't stormed out, and we think, oh, great, we've got there. And the danger is we say, thanks very much for the conversation, and off they go. And what we've forgotten to do is to seal the deal by saying, agreeing with them what the course of action is and what the follow-up's going to be. All right? So when you are going to structure your conversation with Jessica, if you're one of those lucky contestants that comes up here, we're going to ask you to use that BEEF model, okay? Behavior, example, effect, and future. Now, I've done this with engineers. I've done it with actual rocket scientists who said, hey, Russ, this isn't rocket science. And I say, it's not supposed to be rocket science. It's supposed to be something that you can remember so that you can use it yourself tomorrow when you're back at work and you have to have this conversation. Okay? So, we'll put that up. So you've got the BEEF model. We've also got the scenario there. Did you want a couple of minutes for people, Ken?
Let's give them like three minutes to make their notes in their tables.
Okay, so you've got 3 minutes with your colleagues to make some notes, because guess what? You might be the lucky contestant that comes up here and have an idea about what you're going to say.
On your mark, get set, go. So I'll be over here in your sight line. Oh, and we forgot to go over the hand signals.
So wrap it up.
Yeah,
Sun hat, disinterested, but that's the one I'm gonna do off the top.
yeah,
Fucking go for broke.
yeah. End of scene. We gotta close the day.
Do you want me to give them a win?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone, 1 minute left, 1 minute, and then we're gonna start the scenario. Who's ready? Who's finished their BEEF statement? Raise your hand if you're ready. Okay, don't raise your hands if you're ready. Okay, all right. Okay, here we go. We're going to look for a couple of volunteers. Now, I know there were some people in advance who we were speaking to before the event started who said they were willing to volunteer and willing to come up here on stage. I don't know if any of those are ready, or now that they've seen the scenario, they've changed their minds. But I wonder if we have anybody who's willing to be our first volunteer. And before you volunteer, before we get through that, I just got to say, it gets harder as we go along. Jessica's been trained to make it more challenging as we go. So you really want to be the first person to come up. So who's ready to go? Who wants to volunteer? Who's really worked through their BEEF statement with their audiences? Ready to go? Oh, from the back. Welcome. How about a round of applause for our first volunteer? All right, come right on up here.
Okay, now off you go, my
Come
friend.
right on up here. Excellent. So Jessica, why don't you come up on the stage and take this seat here? Come right on up. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming. Tell us, what's your name?
My name is Meg.
Nice to meet you,
Nice to
Meg.
meet
Nice to meet you. Again, a round of applause for Meg. She deserves 2 rounds of applause. Come right on up here. So Meg, I'm going to give you this microphone so that you can, so that everybody in the room can hear the conversation. And I'm just going to make sure that you just invite you to speak directly into it. Keep it like, yeah, there you go, exactly, just like that.
Yep.
So before we begin, tell me, where would you, if this was in real life, where would you have this conversation?
Should be in the conference room.
Should be in the conference room. Okay, so it's not in a public space, it's
Yeah.
in a conference room, but it's also not in your office. It's in a
Yeah.
kind of a neutral place.
Yeah, neutral place.
Okay, great. And then how did you communicate to Jessica? Did you just drop by her desk and say, hey, I want to talk to you right now, or was
No, it's better to have a time fix with Jessica.
Okay.
And
Okay.
You know,
Okay,
ask
so-
her to meet in the conference room.
Okay, so you've put some thought into the set and how you're going to set up the conversation so that you've kind of set the groundwork so that this is a successful conversation. Good for you.
I think always for the difficult conversation, you have to little prepare before you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, okay, great. And in real life, would you have made some notes or would you just be making mental notes? Would you have written something down in real life?
I think it's good to write it down
Okay.
as a highlight.
Okay, good, good. So this is very much like real life in the sense that you've got a separate space and you've got notes in front of you, so we're all set like that. Okay, great. One last thing we need before we begin. We need somebody to be the clapper. You've seen one of these in the film world, right? You know what they actually call this on a film set? It's called a clapper. And the person who uses it is called the clapper. So I'm looking for one person in the front row here who's willing to be the clapper. Are you going to be the clapper? How about a round of applause? And you are Adele. Adele is going to be the clapper. Okay, so Adele, you're going to stand right here, and then you're going to go scene 1, take 1, action. There we go. Good. Ready? Scene 1, take 1. Good, excellent. Way to go, Adele. Thank you very much. And you can step down and off to your chair. We'll have you. You're all done. You're all done. But keep that because we're going to call upon you again. All right. So we're going to give you the first line, Jessica. So.
Hey, Meg, I got your note, but I have another 15 minutes is when I got a hard out here. I've got another meeting. It's been on the books for a while, so
Sure,
this
that's okay.
sort of came up last minute, so.
So I have to ask her the difficult question.
You have to ask her the difficult question now. That's right. That's right. And
So-
you've only got 15 minutes to do it in. So.
Okay, Jessica, can you tell what happened? I mean, why did we miss the presentation?
I don't know what the big deal is. Like, John said it was a great use of time. They talked about other things, important things of the project. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, but you could have told me, in advance on if you have something else as a priority going on, But this was important for the client to do the presentation, So we should not have missed this opportunity. You could have told me in advance, right?
You weren't here.
Yeah, but it's a virtual team, right? You can contact anytime. I'm accessible anytime. So send a note, but we cannot come to the point and then we say, okay, we missed it. That's not a good thing.
I mean, the meeting was at 11? It was in the SharePoint folder at 10:45. All John had to do was look.
You-
And
But why did you not think that this is important to note when you're put on this assignment?
like project design records, Meg?
So what?
Yeah, so what? Exactly. Thank
But-
you. So what?
But how long you're in this company?
9 years.
9 years. So we know how how the client is important for us and how we should be prepared for delivering our things, right?
Yeah, okay. So they had it, they didn't use it, John didn't look. John doesn't look, okay? John never looks,
Yeah.
okay? And And frankly, this deadline was unreasonable.
Yeah. But, you know, I think I look at you as a most senior person for the 9 years, the company. So you could, if you think that something is not going right, you could step up and tell John, you know what needs to be done in this case. You cannot just leave it to somebody else will take it, right?
No, no one else is, I get that. But this meeting, I didn't know about till the day before.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I basically had one day to do a massive report.
Yeah, I know, but
You keep saying, yeah, I know. I don't think you're listening. I think you're just saying yes.
I'm being by being true and trying to understand what we could do better going from here, because we don't want to be in the same situation every time, right? You are the senior person, and I expect something, you know, taking more responsibility.
Okay, if I'm the senior person, then why does John act like my boss? Jessica.
But
He's not my boss, he's my peer, and you're telling me I'm a senior member? Does he know that?
no, that's where the team plays into the role, right? So if you think as a part of the team, and I believe you're part of the team because you're here for 9 years, there's something which is not right from the other colleague, you can highlight that upfront, right?
So
not just relax and just keep it on backside, and we miss that important deadline for us, which is not good.
So it's all my job, the whole thing, everything.
No, it's
so I'm senior, but I'm part of a team, but it's all my fault.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault, but I'm just saying you are setting the examples for others, right? Like John. So I think everybody in the company has their responsibility to be, you know, taking an accountability for the role, what they're playing.
You're never here. I get no feedback from day to day, and then I find out there's a meeting the next day for this report, which I wasn't given a final deadline on, and then, oh, John stresses out. Do you know how much John stresses out every single day? He's just a whirling dervish all the frickin' time. I'm getting an ulcer from watching him.
Okay. So let's go into the basics. What problems do you have? Let's understand the problem. I mean, you are here. I don't want you to be suffocating here. And, you know, being in the 9 years and if something is not going right, let's highlight. I mean, if you want to try to solve the problem, let's identify what.
You're not listening, Meg. I just named them all. The whirling dervish John Chu, who's boring, by the way.
Okay, time out. I'm going to leap in here. Time out. How about a round of applause for Meg so far, right? Like, how about this guy?
That's a difficult conversation.
It's a difficult conversation, right? Okay, well, hold on, Meg. Don't go anywhere. We're just going to check in with the group. I just want to ask the group, just with a show of hands, just on a scale of how much of this is getting through to Jessica? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being she completely understands the problem and is willing to change, and 1 being she's unwilling to accept that there's a problem at all. Where do you put Jessica on that scale between 1 and 10? Show of hands, where do you put her? Where do we see? Oh, Jessica. Jessica, I see a lot of
You're not in
ones.
real like
I
that,
see
right?
2. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then now, just also on a scale of 1 to 10, how's Meg doing in keeping his cool during this conversation? 1 being he is completely calm and collected, and 10 being he's gonna effing lose it any second now. Where do you put him on a scale of 1 to 10? Hold, show of hands, show of hands. I see a 1, 2, you're very calm, but I also see a 10 over here, meaning that you're just about to lose it. What's the real truth? Are you just about, how are you feeling in this conversation?
I enjoyed because I've been like that as a supervisor. So.
You've been in this kind of a situation, okay. All right, well.
Not that this much stuff, though.
Not like this much stuff. Let's check in with the group here. Russell, I wonder if you could get another roving mic. I know we've got one up here, because I just want to check in with the forum. I'm looking for three directions we could go with this conversation. What are 3 suggestions that Meg could do moving forward in order to pursue this conversation? Okay, so I got a couple of suggestions over here. Russell's just looking to see if he's got another roving mic. If not, I can borrow this one. Oh, there's one over here, Russell. Nicole has it for you up here. Thanks. And there was a couple of hands. I just kind of saw a bunch over here. There we go. Thank you. So one suggestion, where can Meg go with this?
There we
There
go.
we go. One thing I would suggest is just acknowledging what Jessica's been going through with having to step into her coworker's role and take on extra work and kind of acknowledge the kind of like you were talking about her seniority, but just also acknowledging everything that she's had on her plate and how you maybe haven't been available and been out or busy, and just acknowledging what she's been going through.
Okay.
Because I think that would pacify her a little.
Okay, so first suggestion is acknowledging everything that she's been going through. And I think one of the things I'm hearing there is acknowledging, but I think I'm also hearing empathy in there as well. Because I did see Meg saying yes, yes, acknowledging what she said, but I think you're suggesting a step further, which is really projecting or giving some empathy to her as well. And I see you nodding. Okay, so step number one is acknowledging and providing empathy. And Lee, what's your suggestion here?
Yeah, it's easy for me. I'd fire John.
You'd fire John. Okay, you'd fire John. Okay, so suggestion number 2 is fire somebody else who's not on stage and not in the room. Okay, and do we have a third suggestion? A third constructive suggestion? There's another hand up over here.
Yeah, you were positioning the company's view, and you were not trying to understand her, and you did not ask why enough. You were on top of your ladder talking, and you were going nowhere.
Right.
So you need to come down to what matters to her, and then find a common ground. And you're not there at all. You're still on top.
Okay. So the suggestion I'm hearing here is to find out what's going on with her at her level by asking why. Okay, so we got 3 suggestions, Meg, and you get to choose which of these directions we want to go in, and then we'll get somebody else to come up here and take the hot seat from you. So suggestion number 1 was showing some empathy. Suggestion number 2 was firing John outright, which I'm going to retranslate into dealing with John. Okay, so just a slight little tweak there, Lee, if you don't mind. And then number 3 is finding out what's going on with Jessica by asking more probing questions. Which of those 3 directions do you think you want to go in?
I think I'll go with the third one.
With the third one. Okay, great. So now the way this works is you get to swap out. Are you willing to come up and take this seat and try that course of action? Yeah? Okay. Round of applause for Meg, too. All right.
Thank you,
Meg. Thank you, Meg. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you being willing to come up here, because we could have gotten another couple of volunteers, but I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no
and
problem.
Your name is?
My name is Renee.
Renee, thank you very much. Here's your microphone, Renee. Here's your chair. And so the way this works is we're gonna pretend this is one conversation. So you're still the same person, except now we're gonna be calling you Renee. And we're gonna pick up the conversation from where we left off by rewinding just one line. We'll go from you, right? So why don't we go from that line where you said, I just told you the problems are, and you can itemize, let's just itemize 1 or 2 of them.
Sure.
All right, great.
Yep.
And oh, look, our clapper is already back. Here's Adele. Alrighty. And
I just told you. It was an unrealistic deadline. I don't get feedback. John thinks he's my boss. I just said them all.
Tell me more about that.
What do you want to know? Pick one?
Yeah, sure. Let's start from the first one.
You know, when you asked me to take over this job, Renee, 3 months ago, I didn't realize it was going to be 3 months, okay? You took me from a great position, leading edge stuff. I was doing my best work, and now I'm a data entry boob. Is it funny? It's hilarious to be the data entry boob. It's not. Do you know how many female engineers are in this company? 3.
I'm sorry you feel that way. It's definitely not what the intent was when we asked you to do this. We count on you, and you produce very good work, and you're very highly respected, and it wasn't meant to demote you in any way. It was, we needed somebody we could trust, and we were looking for you to help us, and I'm sorry if you felt that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Am I going to be moved back anytime soon?
What's the real reason you see it as a demotion? Like, is it?
Because now, so that work was leading edge, Renee. Just cool stuff. And it was creative, and I was working with a great team. And now I'm here with this team, which is boring, by the way. And I'm doing project data records, project design records. Somebody already designed it. I'm just going, and the other team, I'm going to miss out on my promotions that were hopefully going to come. 2 people have already been promoted. That's the problem. I'm a female engineer in this world of men. I worked hard for my degree, Renee, not to type in the design project records, okay? Do you know how hard it is to be a woman in engineering? No, you don't, because you're a guy. It's not funny, Renee. Yeah.
Well,
It's not funny.
Jessica, I understand and I hear you, and I see you're frustrated, and I see that you feel that you've been maybe mistreated, and I apologize. But again, that was not the intent. Can we come to some sort of compromise? I still need the report to be done shortly, but maybe on the longer term, we can make another change.
Hey, I'm just going to call time out. I'm just going to call time out right now. Renee, what are you seeing right now? What's happening right now in this moment?
She's sad.
She's sad, yeah. Yeah, she's sad. She's sad. And she's exhibiting that sadness by crying, right? And so there's something going on in the moment right here, right now, that I think we need to deal with first before we can return to the effect and the future action that we're going to take forward. So I think we need to deal with this moment that's happening for her right now. Are you in a position to be able to do that? Or do you need to swap out and bring somebody else in for this?
I'm willing to try, but it's going to be a difficult conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult conversation, right?
Yeah.
Crying is not something, or dealing with strong emotions in the midst of a conversation is not something that anybody is really looking forward to. And as a man, I find it extra challenging, right, in those particular moments. And so it's an extra challenging moment. So I can understand when you say it's going to be a difficult conversation for you to embark on right now, but you're willing to do it, is that right?
Sure, I am.
Great, thank you. I'm really with you. So we're going to rewind just a little bit. Can you just say it's really hard for me as the only female engineer? And we'll pick it up from there. Okay.
I worked hard to get here, Renee, and I just, damn it. It was great to be part of something that I saw my future growing, that I wasn't going to be left behind again.
Just again, a quick timeout. Let's just check in with the forum. What are 3 things that Renee could do right now to help Jessica with this situation? I saw a hand go up here. Russell's just coming over with a microphone so that everyone can hear you. And don't you worry, you're doing great, okay? We're just going to put you on hold for just a second, give you some support, give you some tools.
I'm fine, thanks.
Go ahead, hold that cry.
Provide some reassurance to her as to what she's feeling and the validity of her feelings at that moment.
Some reassurance through validation of what she's feeling. Okay, all right. What's a second suggestion we could take? There's a hand way over here, Russell. Get your steps in. Way over here.
I think giving her a paper towel to wipe her eyes is something that can help. And ask her if it's okay to hold her hands to reassure her.
Okay.
And then make her appreciate the value of the data entry work she's doing.
Okay.
And how it makes for a high priority project. Because she's doing some really cool stuff. Because that's a high priority project.
Okay.
You want to let her know how.
All right, thank you. There's 3 suggestions in there which I really like. One is to give her a Kleenex. We're looking for a prop. Does anyone in the room have a Kleenex? We'd love it if you could bring it up. Second thing that I also heard you say, oh, thank you. Second thing I heard you say was asking her if she wanted some hand-holding. What I really liked about that was that you were suggesting that we ask permission to touch, which I thought was also a really great thing that you said instinctually that I just wanted to highlight. And then the third thing was, which I think we might save for later, is reassuring her that the project, that she's been doing great work. So there were a couple of suggestions in there. Where do you think you need to go with this, Renee? You've got 4 suggestions. One is validating her feelings. Second is offering her the prop. Second is asking her if she wants some physical comfort. And then also the fourth one is reassuring her that she's been doing great work. So those are some tools you can use. Where do you want to start?
I was hoping you're going to say swap out, but
Okay, that's where you want to start. We can do that. We can do that. We can do that. Who would you like to choose? Who would you like to choose out of the suggestions you had? We had a suggestion from this lady over here.
Yeah, I'll pick the lady over here.
Are you willing to come up?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. Excellent. Round of applause. And a round of applause for Renee, right? Thank you. Thank you very much, Renee. This is really great. Thank you. Like, listen, remember, we warned you that it was going to get more difficult as it went along. So who knows what you're in for. Here's your microphone. What's your name?
Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us, Lisa. So we're going to pick up with, we're going to rewind to the same comment you had before. Can I have the little stinky prop?
It's clean.
And we're going to give you the opportunity to validate how she's feeling. So if you could again rewind it to the same line about being the only female engineer, that'd be great. Where's my clapper? Here we go. And thank you.
I mean, you know how hard it is. Being a woman in this industry is hard. It was hard to get here. It's hard to stay here. And it was hard to leave that project and not know where I'm going. 3 months is a long time, and now I have no idea what's happening.
I hear you. That's a lot of change, and especially moving from a position that you know and you see your path into something that you don't know. Can I offer you a tissue?
Thank you. Thank you.
Please know that the work that you are doing here is valued. We wouldn't have tagged you to move into this position if we didn't see your potential and the opportunities here for you, your ability to support this team in this role, and the opportunities that it opens, the skills that you can develop to aid you in your professional growth.
Thank you. I mean, it's just, it feels like such a lot, and we just came out of COVID, and I'm having some issues at home. Otto is, he's not doing well. He's lost some hair.
I'm so sorry.
And his teeth, a tooth fell out the other day. And there's some mental, he's not getting along with our new roommate, and it's heavy here and it's heavy at home, and it's too much, and I'm not enjoying it. I'm not enjoying any part of it.
What do you think we can do to help with that?
To help with Otto?
To help with the whole amount of overwhelm that you're dealing with. I hear that there's a lot of change happening at home, stress here in the office. How do I best support you to feel comfortable and confident here at the office and able to deliver and feel as though you are, a valued member of this team and that you do have a future here?
It would be great if Otto could come in with me sometimes. I mean, when we had COVID and we were all on Zoom, he was right there on his pillow next to me. And, everybody loves a cat. Everybody loves a cat. They do. Do you like a cat?
Personally?
You don't like cats?
I don't like cats.
Is that why we're not allowed animals in the office? Because I would be comforted by Otto, and I'd get to watch him because he's been to the vet 3 times already. Do you know how expensive that is? And John talks about his frickin' parrot all the time. Now, my parrot is so great, and my parrot talks back to me.
I hear that it would definitely help if we were allowed to have pets in the office. It is a corporate thing. It's definitely not my personal opinion about cats or parrots as to whether or not we're allowed to have them in the office.
If we had John and his parrot, that's a lot of frickin' talking. I have to sit next to him all the time. My cat just meows and licks himself. Look away.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. I think that's why we have the blanket statement of just no pets.
Fine, fine.
And again, out of our hands, both you and me.
You know, can we talk about Steve, who I'm covering for? That guy has had more sick time, more sick leave than anyone else in this department. Why did it fall on me? Why, you said, oh, we didn't have enough extra resources. But how come HR's not working on it? Why was I moved? Which you said is not a demotion, but I can't take a sick day. I can't just leave. But Stevie, he's gone for 3 months. And if he gets really sick or dies, which is not my fault, by the way, then what? I'm supposed to stay in it for the rest of my life? Because there's no extra resources?
Unless that's what you want to do, a long-term permanent position in this role was not the intent. And you and I both don't have control, and Steve doesn't have control of his health, and we are doing our best to support him in that. As for the future plans of HR for if there is a long-term solution, if it's needed, those are discussions that we're having separately with HR, and it's not something I'm privy to discussing with you.
No, I get it, but can we just commiserate here? You know this is a toxic work environment, right? 3 female engineers. You ever hear the guys talking at lunch? Oh, look at the big ones on her. I mean, it's 2022.
You can report that to me, and I'll take care of that.
Okay, but and I'm glad, I hope you take care of that, but it feels like they don't think I know math. I know math, right? It's my whole job is math.
Well, you're an engineer.
Yeah, thank you. Are you placating me?
No,
okay.
You have to know math in order to be an engineer. And when we talk about moving you into this role, really it's about developing a wide range of your skills. And so this, again, I'm going to reinforce, is not a demotion. This is a broadening of your horizons. Having this alongside the engineering skills allows you to progress in your role and in future roles. It opens up new doors to you that being solely an engineer wouldn't necessarily open up.
I can see that. Can we set, we're at 3 months, can we talk in another month about me perhaps going back or finding something?
Yeah, I think I would love to have that conversation with you in a month. I would also like to circle back with you, in a week or two to see how we're doing on the delivery of the deliverables that we do have. I know it's not necessarily the most exciting work for you, but it does need to get done.
No, you're right. I understand. I can do it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. How about a round of applause? Was it Lisa, was it? This is Lisa who knocked it out of the park. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to wrap up the scenario here, but I just want to check in with you. Looking at the screen here, how did we do in this beef model? If we imagine that all 3 of the volunteers who came up here today were one person and that this was one continuous conversation, how did we do in the beef model? Are we at a point now where Jessica understands the behavior and that it was a problem? I see some yeses, I see some no's, and I see a couple of people doing this with their hands, so it hasn't quite gotten through. Were we in processing the conversation? Did we give some clear examples of what the behavior was? Yes? No, not so much. Okay, we didn't. And why weren't we able to give some clear examples? She was leading the conversation, and we were being taken off track. And we had to deal with the elements of the conversation as it came up. Did we make an attempt to talk about the effect that it had on the team, on others, on the company? Yeah, there was some yes that we made an effect, and some no that we didn't quite get there. Again, probably because we were being derailed. Did we, however, get to the future about what the next steps are going to be following this conversation? Okay, now I see lots of nods. We did get to that. So part of what happened in this conversation was that we started in one place and we weren't able to follow the model. The conversation did not unfold as we expected it to. Now, a quick check-in with the group, with the forum. Has that ever happened to you in real life? Right? Yeah. We do, as Russell indicated at the beginning when we showed some of the companies we work with, we do this workshop a lot with engineering companies. We do it with APEGA, the Association of Petroleum Engineers and Geophysicists. And what we have found is that engineers love this program. Second only to, oddly enough, construction workers who wear hard hats and work boots. But the engineers love this program because they get a template, they love a process, and they also love the fact that the process doesn't always apply to real life, and that real life often intercedes, just like with engineering projects. So it works really well in that regard, because you get a chance to identify and plan the conversation, but then you get to practice applying it, and you get to experience what it's like to be taken off course. So that's why we find the program works really well, and that's why we find that the beef model works really well. Now, a quick check-in again with the forum. How many of you here feel that you learned something by watching someone else up here on stage? Raise your hands if you felt you learned something by watching somebody else go through the process. Another thing we think is really useful about the forum theater format is that just because you weren't brought up into the conversation and didn't get a chance to practice it, you also learn by watching. And part of the reason for that is because it really feeds into what's called anecdotal memory. So now, when you return to the workplace and you have to have one of those conversations, you don't need to remember a 42-step flowchart on how to have the conversation or on how the conversation should be structured. All you have to do is access the memory of what happened here today. And that is so much easier to remember than a 42-step process, because that's the way the human brain works. It is experiential, it is relational, and we are hardwired to remember things in relation with one another. And that's why this program works. I'm going to invite Russell to come back up on the stage and just close for a moment. Russell, here you go.
Thanks very much, Ken. Okay, let's have a final round of applause for our contestants, okay, who are up here, Meg and Renee and Lisa. Fantastic job. And as we said, we had one or two people who pre-volunteered. They weren't the people who pre-volunteered, okay? So they were live, real sort of guinea pigs to come up here. So big and brave to come and do it. Can we have a round of applause for Jessica, please? So often in events like this, we can give out sort of handouts of some of the sort of key points we talked about. But we thought, well, if we do that, it just becomes that sort of dog-eared piece of paper that gets shoved in your bag and probably gets thrown out on the C train on the way home. So what we've done is we have got some free gifts for you, okay? We have a QR code, which if people want to get a copy of that QR code, it's available now. It's also available on our booth outside. You can download some free gifts. So you can get the beef model, you can get the 5 stages of conflict avoidance, you can get an offer that we have on our online fundamentals course, covering a little bit more depth what we were doing this morning and having 2 of our actors actually acting out the scenarios in front of you, and we have that available to you. So if people are interested in that, they think, hey, this was the greatest thing I've ever seen, then they can go and get the QR code and go and download that free shit that we're giving away. Alternative, they thought, I really like Todd Hirsch better. Did Todd give you anything away for free? All right, if he didn't give you anything for free, just download our free stuff and pretend it's from Todd, okay? That's the way it goes. So you have that information to you. Now, we do have some time before we finish for some Q&A, because we did have some questions that had come up from the pre-event that people have been putting in onto our, on the app. And we hadn't answered those with people directly because we were going to hope to answer some of those in person here, and any that we didn't get around to answer, Ken and I will answer those.
And 2 points before we move on, Russell. The first is that one of these things online is not only the beef worksheet, which you do have in front of you, but you can have an electronic copy of it. But the other thing is a 10-page summary of the beef model so that you can have a written explanation of it, which is an excerpt from our book, which is also for sale out there. And then in that online course, there are also, I believe, 2 free preview videos, so you can get a taste of what the course is like. And one of them is a demo with the actors, and it's the same scenario we did today. So you can see how those actors are dealing with that conversation there as well.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Ken. So questions, what do we have?
First question I have here is, what are the strategies to get someone's attention to even begin a difficult conversation?
Okay, strategies to get their attention. Other than telling them you need to meet with them. Yeah, I think that would just go back to basics. I think that would be the first thing, is actually making sure that you set up a time with somebody to meet with them. And I think then part of it is this beginning part of explaining why you're having the conversation and why it's important. Because sometimes if people don't know something's wrong, they don't know why they're having that conversation. So it might be to explain to them before we even get into our beef model as to why it's important. And then you're more likely to get them go, oh, okay, I can see why we're meeting, rather than just come and see me and then they come in and they're sort of hit cold.
I think you've raised a good point there, Russell. We talked just kind of at the beginning with Meg there about what I refer to as set and setting. So setting is the room in which you're having it, which in this case was a conference room, or it could be in some of our other scenarios, participants like to have it in a neutral place like a coffee shop or whatever. But the set part is how you set up the conversation. And so to directly answer the question, sometimes it's not just, I want to talk with you on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. It's about saying, I want to talk with you on Tuesday at 10 o'clock about that report that was not delivered. So that they know what the conversation is about, and so you're not ambushing them in the conversation. But also so that they know the stakes matter, because you'll notice one of the first things that happened with Jessica here is she said, I got another meeting in 15 minutes, so we really better get through this, right? So and you might, I don't know if you clocked it, but it took us 30 minutes to even just get through the scenario. So she was late for her meeting. So you want to make sure then that she knows to set aside the time necessary for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, what can managers do to enable subordinates feel free to ask difficult questions or bring up difficult discussions in the workplace?
Okay, so a couple of things that you have in mind here. One is be explicit and tell people that they can ask questions, and there is no such thing as anything that's off limit that they can't ask questions about. Because then people know that they can actually ask questions rather than they're wondering. The other thing that I used was using like a sort of issues board where people could come and they could write up issues that they had that they wanted to talk about at the next meeting. So the team I used to run, we used to have Monday morning meetings, and anybody in the team could put an issue up on that board for discussion at that meeting. And whatever it was, there would be part of time that we would talk about it, okay? The rule was that once we discussed that issue, it couldn't come back up again at like the next meeting. You know, if it was always like, why is there not more variety of coffee in the break room? And that comes up every single meeting, you know. You said you can put it up there, you've got your floor, you've given somebody 10 minutes or so where they could raise the topic and talk about it. But once we'd had the conversation and got to some resolution, it didn't keep brought up again and again. So there's always opportunity for people to raise new issues.
You know, Nicole, the woman who's sitting next to you earlier said that you use an issue log in your workplace, and I wonder if that's similar to what Russell was just describing. Yeah, you're nodding. Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We do have a question.
Oh, yes, great, excellent, thank you.
Hello, you mentioned that it's a good idea to set ahead of time a meeting and when. I would think that it's also when in a day and what time before the weekend, when to have that meeting. I would think that first thing in the morning is probably not good with the person being distraught for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's a good point. So part of the set and setting is not just the location, not just preparing it, but actually, so the setting is not just the location, but the time of day. I think you've raised a good point there. Absolutely. Is there any other comments or questions from the group? I was just
mentioned about the time of the week, because sometimes people say, I don't want to have that conversation on a Monday because it'll affect the rest of the week. So I'll have the conversation Friday afternoon so it doesn't affect me, but it's really going to affect somebody's weekend. So I looked at, avoid Monday, but Tuesday's a good day. At some point we've got to have that conversation, so let's go, but don't do it on a Monday and don't do it on a Friday, and try and keep it to Tuesday or Thursday if you can.
This kind of sounds like 5 stages of conflict avoidance.
Hey,
That's also available for downloading on the site. There's a hand over here and one over here. We'll go here first.
So I was wondering, when Jessica said, okay, we better hurry up, I only have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
What should the response, what would be a good response? And should it be like, reschedule? I'm wondering, because I would think that if I have a difficult conversation with one of the team member and I needed that time, I don't think 15 minutes is good enough. I think when I hear that, I was like, should I be saying, okay, maybe we should do it, reschedule, but I would like to hear what other people say, or at least to kind of say, what would be the best response from the person that, or, if I'm asking Jessica, and she's saying that, what would be the best response if I am not going to reschedule?
That's a good question, and I have an answer. I'm sure Russell has an answer, but you explicitly ask if there's any suggestions from the room. So let's, in the spirit of Forum Theater, let's check in with the room. Is there anybody that has a response to that question? How would you handle that moment at the beginning of the, so there's a hand over here. Microphone's coming your way, thanks.
Pushing off the meeting would not be an idea that I want to do, because I want to express how important the meeting is around this. The fact that she would come in there and say she only has 15 minutes would probably mean that I didn't give her an agenda, or I didn't let her know ahead of time what the meeting was about. I would address those topics, and I would give her the chance at the end of the meeting to have a further conversation if she wants to keep on talking about it. But I would stick with that time slot because of the urgency of the project and because how serious it is.
Okay, so you would stick with that time slot, but it sounds like you say you would also take ownership of the fact that I apologize for not giving you an agenda and not fully communicating to you how important this conversation was.
That's right. And give her a chance, if she doesn't have enough chance to be heard in the meeting, or we need to discuss it further, we have the option to reschedule to another meeting where we keep talking about it.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. A second suggestion on that? Okay. Seems like we covered that. You also had your hand up over here.
Yeah, we have time for one more question here.
Good.
Well, mine is less of a question, more of a suggestion. So my approach to this is actually to create a constant culture of feedback, which is I have one-on-one meetings with all of my project managers, my business analysts every week. And at the end of every conversation I have, do you have any feedback for me? Or is there anything I can be doing to improve? And we have this conversation all the time, so it never gets to the point where I need to effing talk to you. It's every week I am talking to you. And so it de-escalates the whole thing, because you're creating a culture of constant feedback.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, and I would echo that to make this easier for yourself, if you're regularly having that check-in with your team, okay, and you're regularly giving people the opportunity to raise concerns or raise issues, then it means that these situations become easier to deal with, unless it's something that comes out of the blue. Because people have got used to the point that you're going to be asking for updates, and they're used to being offered the opportunity to ask for feedback and to offer their views. So I think that idea about having a continuous feedback loop with people on a regular basis is a good way to go forward.
Yeah, Russell often calls this catching people in the act of doing things right, which I think is a quote you get from
Ken Blanchard. Some people may have read Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute Manager books. He talks about catching people doing things right. So when they're doing things right, you can reinforce with them that that's good, so they can do more of it, and not just catching people doing things wrong, which is the seagull manager. And some of us may have had a seagull manager. Yeah, they swoop in, crap over you, and then they piss off. Yeah. We'll leave on that thought. Okay. Don't be a seagull manager. Be, as our colleague here was saying, having that regular conversation and catching people doing things right.
It's been our pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you so much. These workshops don't work if you don't participate. So a final round of applause to everyone who participated today, either with questions or comments. That was just excellent. Thank you. Thanks so much for having us. It's a real pleasure to be here. We'll be out at the table if you have any questions over lunch. Thank you and goodbye.
Mitt, you gave him a run. Very nice, very nice. Well done. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a break for lunch now. We give you 8 minutes to have lunch. No, 11:30 to 12. Now, I want to tell you at 12, for those who want to participate and watch, we're going to have a little battle between the North and the South. I've made up about 18 PMI-oriented questions, not all, some just project management. And we're going to keep track and see who really has the best chapter. So be sure to tune in. 11:30 to 12, nachos and tacos, a natural for Calgary. Okay, take a break. We'll see you back here at noon.